Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Ronald Dorsey. He's a singer-songwriter. Ronald, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much to be a part of your program.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think you kind of have an interesting take and kind of background on kind of everything you've been doing. And I've kind of wanted to have somebody in your kind of space where they're a singer-songwriter, they have a label, and just kind of hustling. Because I think a lot of that stuff, for me at least, I grew up kind of playing drums and guitar, and I still play sometimes. But for me, I think the similarities between kind of the music industry and the startup industry are pretty similar. And I think a lot of people would potentially feel that way. And I think just getting a different take on the space from somebody like yourself is going to be really kind of interesting. But maybe before we kind of get into all that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Okay. I grew up in Essex County, New Jersey. At a time when, the economy was pretty vibrant, and I had some wonderful parents and wonderful grandparents that provided me with a great upbringing and great education.
Okay.
In a really nice environment. And I kind of, got shuffled off the church when I was 7, 8 years old. And when I was 9,
sure.
Started singing in church as a 9-year-old, and they kind of put me in front of the whole choir, and ever since then, I've been doing music. After, singing with the choir, working with the choir director and other people in the church, started to learn a little piano.
Sure.
And then eventually went on, parents got me some lessons and a teacher, and that's where things went, starting out anyway, on the music form.
Sure. I think a lot of people get started kind of at an early age in church or something like that. Like, I think the funny thing that's interesting to me about the whole thing is when you're a child, you're not as scared to get up in front of people and perform, whether it's,
right.
Singing or dancing or just anything really. Like, so walk me through a little bit of your childhood related to that. Like, were you putting on kind of concerts all the time, or was it just kind of like a weekly, time to sing in church, or kind of walk me through kind of your singing career early on?
Well, so the kind of church that I grew up in, I guess, would be called holiness or Pentecostal, or even maybe some people would classify it as Baptist. So in that particular church, music is a very big part of the whole, I guess you would say the whole presentation.
Sure.
Or the whole service. So, maybe if it's a 2-hour service or a 2.5-hour service, music may take up to an hour.
Wow.
So, with the music being a part of that, obviously every Sunday you start off, with some songs and what they call praise, prior to the main sermon. So that was a big part of what I did. But along with that, a lot of the choirs in the area would also travel to different churches around the country. So, like I said, at the time I was 9 years old and I was in front of the choir. I was the lead singer.
Nice.
So they took me everywhere. They took me up and down the East Coast, as far as, I think we went as far as Tallahassee, Florida.
Cool.
And performing gospel songs.
Sure.
Some standards and also some originals. So, so I guess it kind of parallels. I had read Aretha Franklin's autobiography, and for her it was kind of the same thing. As a child, she was in a church, and even beyond the normal Sunday services, they traveled around the country performing the gospel song. So
Sure.
so that's pretty much where it took me, from starting in the church and moving the music and sharing the music around to different churches around the country.
Sure. No, I think that's really cool, man. So you keep singing, you end up joining the Air Force, correct? After high school?
Right. Yeah. I graduated high school, and after that, at that time, I could have went to college, but I didn't have the discipline for
Okay.
college. So, I had a friend that joined the Air Force, and he told me about it, and I said, okay, well, I'll go down and, go through the process of taking a test and all of that. And at the time in high school, I had took electronics in high
Okay.
school, and I was a straight A student in electronics. So, if some people probably know, in the military, they give you an aptitude test. So for me, I scored a very high score in electronics, and from there, when I joined the Air Force, they trained me for electronics, and at that time it was for computer electronics.
Okay.
So along with that, once again I got to travel around the country for the first time, really, in my life. Travel around the country as a member of the Air Force, and also learning about computers and working on computers. And so fast forward, after a 6-year stint, came back to New York, and got employed by corporate America, using my computer skills, and working for corporations. I was able to augment my knowledge, and it was at a time when the whole kind of internet thing was really starting to take off.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to do very well as a Cisco network engineer, working for corporate America, and I did that for about 12 years, and it was very intense. A lot of tough
Sure.
hours, especially in kind of a Wall Street, New York banking environment. So I kind of got burnt out and went back to music.
No,
Went back to just doing music full time.
Sure. No, it's interesting because I think like I've known a ton of people. Like I've been in tech too for a long time, and it's funny how many people are either like were musicians, still musicians, in kind of the space. So it's always kind of fascinating to meet somebody like yourself that's kind of blended the two together. But I'm curious. So you leave kind of your computer job, and now you're running kind of a record label. What made you decide
Right.
to kind of take your music and start your own kind of label?
Well, I guess obviously, as most musicians or most songwriters, at some point, you kind of figure out that, okay, I hear this stuff on the radio, or I hear stuff that's recorded, and I hear stuff that I like,
Sure.
and hey, I think what I have is on par with that, and I think what I have is in some cases better than some of the stuff I hear on the radio.
Sure.
So that kind of gives you the confidence to take it to the next level, where you want to say, okay, well, I want to take what I've created as a musician, or as a songwriter, and I want to try and share that with a larger audience. And with that, obviously in today's world with the technology, the technology makes it a lot more easy than it was maybe 30 or 40 years ago to go in and record a song and mix it and get a very pretty good quality recording that you can present to the world for consumption. So that's where kind of the technology kind of comes in and helps you out.
Sure.
So
Like
then I guess beyond that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, keep going. Sorry.
No, so I was going to say, beyond, obviously nowadays the technology making it easier to record and mix music. The question becomes after that, kind of like a friend of mine mentioned to me. It's kind of like when you write the song, you end up being, especially independent, you end up being the dog that's chasing the car, so to speak.
Sure.
So you chase the car, and as a friend of mine mentioned to me, once the dog catches up to the car, what next?
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
So So the dog chases the car. Okay, the car stops. He gets up to the car. Now what is he going to do? So now the question. So that's so let's. I like to use the analogy of being independent and writing the song and recording the song as being the dog chasing the car. So now when you stop, now becomes the tough part, which is the whole marketing thing.
Right.
And that's where the battle comes. That's where the battle comes in. Where you have to try and use the services of a company like Axis and people like Sarah, along with just understanding the technology and the internet on your own to try and present that music from a marketing standpoint, to a large audience. With obviously, as I mentioned before, with limited wherewithal.
Sure. So how are you, working and with like you're working with obviously like a PR firm, Access PR out of LA, but how are you guys kind of trying to grow the label? Like, are you leveraging them quite a bit? Are you hustling kind of your own stuff online, or is it a bit of both?
Well, primarily I'm hustling my own stuff, and I have some other artists, a few artists that I'm working with and trying to bring on board to the label and getting them going.
Sure.
So, but as I mentioned before, it becomes a matter of making sure that you have things in line and also having the wherewithal before you bring those other artists on to have as great a success as you can have
Sure.
as a label.
So like, are you cold calling kind of, stations, or how are you trying to really get kind of your songs and your other artists on the label kind of out? Are you posting online? Are you like, how are you kind of promoting like your stuff as well as other artists on the label?
Well, definitely, as you mentioned, in the online space, posting stuff using social media, YouTube, Vimeo,
Sure.
even like you said, even doing some cold calling to some stations that will take the time to listen to some indie labels, and that's very appreciated because that's obviously with terrestrial radio, that's a very tough market. Because of the once again the money that it takes to hire a professional radio promoter in this business, and also you're as an indie you're up against the major labels.
Sure.
Who basically have unlimited resources, and but it's also wonderful too that the internet allows us to be in an environment that kind of levels the field a bit. With
Sure.
the stream in the world of streaming, with companies like Apple and Spotify, and also Pandora.
Yeah.
Being an indie, it also indie label, or even just an indie singer songwriter, it allows you to have a seat at the table and have your music heard from a streaming standpoint.
Sure.
So that's another way. Using iTunes and CD Baby and Tidal. In those type of places where you can sell and market your music, and also they're very helpful to indie labels also in that way.
Sure.
And to the limit that they can, help us, with the resources that we have.
Sure. So
I hope I answered that question.
No, I think it's good. I guess the follow-up question to that is like, does somebody like CD Baby or some other service kind of help you get on the streaming services, or do you have to submit to each one independently, or how does that kind of work as a label?
No, well, as an independent label, yes, companies like CD Baby. CD Baby is one. I think they're kind of one of the most well-established ones, but obviously there are some
Sure.
other companies that do the same thing, and they do kind of a one-stop shopping thing where you submit your music or your video for a finite price, and then what they do is they partner with Apple and Spotify and Tidal, and also a lot of other services like that internationally.
Sure.
and they, once again, like I said, they give you an opportunity to kind of level the playing field. So that's the way for independent label artists to get their product to a worldwide audience, like you said, from a streaming standpoint. So once again, that's like I said before, that's the beauty of the internet. So, but once again, getting back to the whole marketing thing of a major versus a independent or upstart independent, in our case, is you're looking at the difference. A major label can say, okay, we want the artist to be featured on Jay Leno,
Sure.
or I'm sorry, not Jay Leno. I'm kind of
Yeah.
going back a bit, but let's say Jimmy Kimmel, a
Yeah.
show like that. A major label or a major, let's say a major syndicated radio program like Westwood One,
Sure.
things of that nature that have a very, very broad reach, in terms of marketing. So, that's the thing as an indie label. That's the muscle that they have that we don't have. So we have to kind of, get out there. And also, I can't neglect mentioning having every opportunity that you can to have your artists perform at local venues or venues when you travel around the country live, because that's probably one of the greatest ways to win over fans is with a live performance.
Sure.
Obviously, recordings are wonderful, but there's nothing like that live performance.
No, I 100% agree. Like, obviously the CD market is kind of in non-existent. I know some artists still sell a pile of CDs in certain demographics, but in your experience, how do artists and kind of labels, especially kind of from the indie side, make a lot of their money? Is it kind of touring and playing live and selling merch, or is it trying to get their songs in commercials or video games, or is it a little bit of all those things?
Definitely. Like you said, touring and playing live, getting opportunities to play gigs is probably the place where you earn the most money. But there are sometimes there are some nice situations where kind of word of mouth through social media, a particular tune may pick up, and a lot of times people will listen to a song on YouTube or through streaming for a while, and if they really really like it, they'll commit to downloading it.
Sure.
I mean, the 99 cents, here and there adds up and helps,
Sure.
Helps make the rent. So that's still, people can't, I think a lot of people kind of dismiss, the whole download thing now because streaming is so popular with the whole kind of a la carte, pay one price thing. But some people still really, if they find a song that they enjoy, be it, indie or major, they'll go ahead and download it. And so once again, after that, as you mentioned, I guess the thing that most people look for now is if they can have an opportunity to have a song featured in a television show, or like you said, in a movie, or even in an advertisement on television. If I think you'll agree with me that I think when Steve Jobs was still kind of in front of at the head of Apple,
Yeah.
and when the iPhone and the iPod were in their infancy, they used quite a few independent artists and independent labels to
Totally.
promote.
Totally.
To promote iTunes and the iPod and the iPhone.
Yeah.
They really did. So obviously as they grew, and Apple Music kind of came in, they I guess since they grew so large, I think they kind of started leaning more toward established and more popular artists, to promote the platform. But that was one period of time, maybe, probably from, if I can remember, 2003 to maybe 2010. And I think they primarily used independent artists. So as you mentioned, that is an avenue, and that's where your hustle comes in. That's where, like you said, you do your cold calling, or you reach out to people, or you can have someone like Sarah at Axis maybe connect you with some publishers or some music supervisors that can give your song or your tune a listen and feature it in a program on television or a movie, and that is really a wonderful uh, way to have a good windfall of income.
Sure. So are you spending quite a bit of time maybe like networking online or going to kind of local events, or are you just trying to spend a lot more time kind of online? Because I think the crazy thing about the internet is geographic borders are kind of gone nowadays, right? Like you have
Right.
anywhere on the planet, you basically can get your whatever you're doing kind of heard or seen or both, right? And you kind of have access to almost you could basically connect with anybody if you spend enough time kind of getting through either cold calling or emailing or guessing their email or a handful of other kind of tactics. But how do you kind of see your day to day to actually get the label and kind of your music and other people on the label's music out there?
Right now, probably the greatest uh, venue that we have, or the greatest avenue we have right now is social media. You
Okay.
know, that's right now. That's probably the number one venue that we have,
Okay.
and obviously that usually ties into we have our company website, which for us is skypalacemusic.com,
Okay.
and if I can mention it for me as an
Sure.
artist is
Okay.
ronalddorsey.com.
Perfect.
So usually those will tie back into the social media presence, and that usually gives you as an indie your biggest exposure beyond people a lot of times just independently discovering things on YouTube. You know, a lot of times people may search for artists that they like. That's a major artist, and when they get that artist, when it pops up on YouTube, an indie artist may pop up right next to them.
Sure.
And a lot of times, they may go ahead and hey, what's that? And give it a click and find out that that's something they like. And then after that, like you said, that's something else that I do is when I can right now travel around the country and perform with different venues and try and connect with some local radio, or even some local television, even if it's you know what do you call it, public access cable that
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah.
you know,
No,
there,
totally.
there are still people that do right. People still do local shows, and they'll be more than glad to have an independent or upcoming indie artists perform on their shows and do interviews like you're doing. So definitely, those are definitely some of the ways to get out, and that we're using to get the word out and let the world know that here we are, and we have a product that we think is something that the public will love just as much as the product that comes from the majors. And by the way, this whole conversation and interview with you is one of those avenues. So thank you.
No, I appreciate you being on the show as well and talking about this stuff because I think the thing that's interesting about the whole space to me anyway is you go to some of these big cities and I've never been to New York. I would love to go to New York, but I spent some time in Los Angeles a number of years ago and the thing that blows me away about some of those big kind of cities is you can go to kind of like either a comedy club or a music club or kind of like I know you've done kind of some stuff with variety shows that like there's a lot of really really good talented people that are either trying to make a career out of it, do it for fun, or kind of everywhere in between that you never know. Where I find that happens in kind of some non-big cities as well. But like the thing that blew me away about it is you have sometimes on those venues you'll have like somebody that's just starting out and then like a huge act will play these like small kind of intimate venues. And I think that was kind of like the one thing that I don't know why I never really thought of it, but you have these like incredible experiences sometimes by just going to these like local, maybe smaller kind of clubs to see whatever you're kind of into. And I think they're better in bigger cities, not necessarily saying they're bad in smaller cities, but there's a lot of support, I think, or potential support in some cities across the states. Is that fair to say in your experience?
Oh, definitely, definitely, definitely. Obviously, the human interaction that's face to face can never be superseded by
Sure.
anything.
Sure.
And for me, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. A lot of times when I go to some of these venues where you have the live performance of somebody you've never heard and you're affected by it, and it's so wonderful. And I like to compare it to even seeing maybe a live professional sporting event
Mm-hmm.
compared to seeing it on television. And one of the things that happens to me is when I had that experience, when I leave a small cafe in New York, that I sat there for maybe 2 hours listening to live music from people that I've never heard of that really put their energy into it. When I leave for a couple of days, I can't listen to anything recorded because I've been so affected by that experience.
Interesting.
It's
Sure.
like I'm still absorbing it. I'm still absorbing it. So, and even for us, one of the things that we do is obviously along with the music that we have that's recorded, we try to find some way to put a live performance online also.
Okay.
So that
Interesting.
is because I mean that is always to me as a listener and as a fan of music myself, that is always the if I'm using the correct word, the barometer for talent for
Okay.
me.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
as wonderful as wonderful and as good as a recording can be, for me, I would always love to hear and or see the live performance. So one of the things we do is when we can, we'll take a recording of a live performance of one of the songs that we have recorded, that's for sale or being streamed. So when people go, they can go on YouTube or go to the website and they can hear it live and they can say that, hey, this is really good. This is real.
Sure.
This is something. Obviously, if it's something that they like, they can hear it and they can say, this is real. This person is playing the song with their instrument and singing or with the band, and I can kind of juxtapose or I can compare that to the recording, and I can
Sure.
say that wow, this is a product that I want to spend my money on this because this is authentic. This is not something that with technology having being a double-edged sword, you can have stuff that the recording can be wonderful and you're blown away by it and you go see that artist, and this can be a major artist, by the way, a major label artist,
Mm-hmm.
and you go you spend your money, you spend your bucks to go see him on a ticket, and their live performance sounds nothing like the recording.
Totally. I've seen the. I'm
So
sure we've all been there, right?
and you want your money back. so
Yeah. Fair enough.
so so right. So that's to me. So definitely, that's definitely the top of it is to have that live performance. So that's just wonderful that you mentioned about that experience of going to venues in big cities, particularly like you said in New York and LA, because there's so much of it in those cities, and you can experience it any night of the week. So that's the wonderful thing about having the ability to visit those cities. And I would encourage anyone within the sound of my voice that you know anytime that it's within your means, if you can go to a city like New York or LA and have that experience of maybe over a period of 2 or 3 nights or even 4 nights, if you can do that and just go out to these cafes, just check out online and find these little places, and it's like you said, it's a lot of wonderful talent, a lot of wonderful talent.
Totally. So, we haven't really talked about this, but like, what types of kind of stuff do you write, and what types of stuff do the artists kind of on your label write about, or is it a little bit all over the map?
Okay, it's a little all over the map, and I think that stems from my experience when I was in the Air Force and traveling around the country in the Air Force, and then subsequent to that, once I started to work for corporations, a lot of times they would send me traveling around the country too.
Sure.
So with that experience, that was a great fertile uh, ground for songwriting. So for me as a songwriter, a lot of songs that I write, primarily I started doing R&B songs.
Okay.
And then after that, I would find myself maybe tooling around with the guitar, with an R&B song. And somewhere along the line, I would turn it into a country song.
Interesting.
And from a writing standpoint, for me, I was able to kind of absorb the, I guess, the middle America experience from being in the Air Force and interacting with people from Tennessee and Oklahoma and Kansas and Texas and and that's tonight one of the nice things about the military is it provides sort of an egalitarian experience
Sure.
for a young person, to see that, hey, we're kind of all the same. We're kind of all the same from all over the world, all over the country. And so with that experience, when I started to write some of the songs, I kind of took some of those morphisms or the dialect or the way that some of the guys that I met from Tennessee or Kansas or Nebraska spoke, some of the kind of that plain speak thing that they have, especially people from the southeastern United States and also from Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. And I kind of turned that into some songs, for me anyway, some country songs. And then with some of the artists that I work with, they kind of primarily do more R&B songs. So I'm kind of the one that's I'm more all over the place. But at the same time, as a songwriter, I think it's you kind of throw the marketing thing out of the window sometimes because you feel like you just want to present and write the best song that you can write, be it whatever genre it is.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. And I think that kind of relates to anything kind of outside of music as well, kind of whether you're in tech or a business or a startup or whatnot. It's like the more and more you understand kind of what other people are doing in different parts of the world or their background or their culture or, the stuff that they like at the end of the day, it's very hard to come up with something like truly original nowadays, right? And if you're like, ooh, I really like this kind of style of, like guitar lick from, this part of the country, and then you mash it with something else from another part of the country, and then some of your own ideas, you can create something really cool, right? And I think that's what like a lot of businesses and startups do. And I know you might have mentioned Apple and stuff like that. It's like Apple wasn't the first ones to build an MP3 player. Far from it. Like I had the first one. It didn't even fit one album. You couldn't. I think it fit like 10 songs. So, but to my point and to your point, it's like the more and more you just see what other people are doing and try to like take the good pieces or the things that you enjoy and kind of make it your own, you can have something really great come out of that.
Right, and then with the whole thing with the like you said, being all over the place doing, for me anyway, doing country and doing R&B and also maybe doing a blues tune here or there. I mean, if we look at the technology now, I mean, music is primarily consumed from people listening on headphones,
sure,
using their phone.
Yeah,
that's primarily what people listen to music now. So you tell me. I want to ask you the question: what person do you know, including yourself, that listens to only one or even two genres of music on their phone or their music player?
Sure. Yeah. Like I think I'm a little bit lucky, I guess, because I listen to music kind of all day at my day job. So I get to listen to music all day, but I switch genres all the time. And I think the one thing that I love and kind of hate about streaming music is I miss going to the record store and like picking out like a CD, and actually like spending the time to listen to it. I've started to buy more vinyl. It's tricky, right? Like to actually spend time, where you're sitting down and you put your record on and actually listen to it, right? Where with streaming, the good thing about it is you basically have access to most things that were like ever recorded, right? I get that's kind of an oversimplification, but it's almost kind of daunting sometimes because you're like, I can listen to anything, but I don't know what I want to listen to right now. But the cool thing about it, and you alluded to it earlier, is you could be listening to like somebody that's, number one on the charts right now in a certain genre, and then it recommends something that's like, could be somebody that's like local in your city, right? And they're almost on the same playing field, which is really cool.
That's really wonderful, But like you said before, getting back to technology being that double-edged sword, and I like the fact that you mentioned about how you missed that experience of going in a record store or a CD store and purchasing a CD. One of the things that did, and for me, a lot of times social media is kind of a contradiction in terms.
Sure.
Because usually when you're kind of interacting with it, you're by yourself. Whereas when a lot of times I can remember going to, like you said, going to a record store or a CD store, and when you're looking for something, you will meet somebody there.
Yeah, totally.
That may have a like interest in music that you have, and they may even recommend something to you that they like, and you become a fan of that new piece of music that they recommended to you, versus like you said, versus going to a streaming site where they make recommendations, which are good, whether they be human curation or algorithm-based curation. They're usually pretty good. But like I said before, just like that live performance in a small cafe in New York or LA, there's nothing like interacting with another human being face to face.
Sure. No, that's great, man. But we're coming to the end of the show, so let's maybe mention where people can get more information about yourself and the label.
Okay. I think I mentioned a little earlier. For me, myself, you can go to my site, which is ronalddorsey.com, and kind of take a look at some of the music that I have, and maybe a little bit some of the things that tell my story, and also a music video that we have. And for the label, you can go to skypalacemusic.com. Where we have information about our artists and some of our stuff, and a little bit of our story and how we kind of came along. And other than that, you can just Google Sky Palace Music or Ronald Dorsey, and it'll take you, I guess, all over the place. And everywhere from YouTube to Vimeo and beyond, Facebook and beyond, and all of the social places where you can kind of get an idea of what we have to offer musically, and what we're looking to do in the future, and venues we'll be playing. And then also, as I mentioned before, maybe you'll find that live performance or two, where you can kind of say that, hey, I'm getting the sound from the recording, but I'm also getting, some representation of the live show. So that's pretty much it.
Perfect, Ronald. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Okay, you too, and thank you so very much, and I appreciate you and your show greatly, and giving people in technology and in the startup world an opportunity to share their experience.
Well, I appreciate it, man. All right, well, we'll talk soon. All right, bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show, and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com, and keep building the future.